Howdy guys, Motorcycle Boss again. So we have another project. This time it's going to be for the ZX10 once more, and it's going to be for a shift star that Factory Pro makes, and it's going to basically smooth out all of the shifts that I've been recently having issues with. It's becoming a little notchy and I have to apply excessive pressure to it. I've already switched out a detent in the past, just thinking that that might have been the issue. So I'm just going to do a whole shift star upgrade this time. And this time I do have someone new helping me out. It's going to be Leo. This is one of my best friends, and he's been dabbling in motorcycle mechanics with me for a little bit, and he's been learning. So he's going to be my helping hand for this project. So let's get to it. So before we begin this project, we're going to get the bike in neutral. Alright, so down at the shifter in this area, we actually have a bolt and it's going over our shift shaft. We're going to remove this bolt all the way, pull this out, and then there's going to be a clip behind it that's holding that rod in place. Later on in the project, we're going to have to actually pull this all the way through. So this is keeping us from doing that. That's why we're taking that off now. So now we've taken the shifter apart. There's going to be a little C-clip holding this shaft in. So we're going to use some circlip pliers to remove that. So once this circlip is removed, then there's going to be a washer behind it. You're going to remove that washer. Okay, good there. And now we'll move to the other side. Next, go up to your clutch, and you're actually going to screw this adjuster in all the way. And the whole point of this is to remove the clutch cable. Actually, it pulls out right here. Make sure that side notch is lined up. We're going to pull that out from the lever. And now we're going to go to the receiving end of this. Alright, so the receiving end of the clutch is right up here, and now I have some slack in here. So we did that so that way after I remove this panel I can undo this clutch cable. So in order to gain access to that and this whole cover for the clutch, because the shift kit is behind the clutch pack, I have to remove this panel. So for this particular bike, there's going to be one bolt way down here, there's going to be one in the very front, you have 3 bolts up there, and then there's going to be I think 2 or 3 on the inside near the front tire. So fortunately we don't have to take this off or a cage or anything, so we're going to knock that out.
You break it, you buy. Get out of my store.
So now at this point, before we remove this case, which is the next part, some people have a misconception. They think that you have to drain the oil before you remove this, but right here, this side glass actually shows you the oil level, and as you can see, the oil level is below this point. So there's no need to drain the oil at this point. What we have to do is we're going to take all of these bolts off that are surrounding this cover, and you're going to take them, you're going to loosen them, you're just going to crack them loose all the way around in a star pattern so you release it evenly. And then you're going to undo all of them. But make sure that before you do that, if you were just recently riding, make sure the bike stays cool. Let it cool down all the way, then move on to this part. As you remove this cover, you'll be able to disconnect this cable at this linkage, and then we'll move on to that part. Where did your socket go?
I've been asked that question plenty of times.
So now we're going to try to remove this. You should have some pull tabs kind of like right here, and there's probably going to be another one somewhere else, but you may have to rock it and just back it out. See if you can remove this linkage while you're in this position. You may not be able to, and that's fine, but at least just see if you can. Move it. Go that way. Alright. This part right here is our linkage. You can see inside it has kind of like a weird kind of hook, and that actually grabs this and pulls that and relieves pressure off of the clutch pack. Alright, so now we're at this point. You're going to want to remove your gasket. Sometimes it might be just in pieces, and that's fine, but make sure you remove this. And as you remove it, you'll have these little dowels, like pins that are sticking out that center the gasket. Just make sure those don't move, or just remove them completely. And these ones seem pretty stiff and sturdy, so I'm just going to leave those and make sure that they're all there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove these clutch springs, and we're going to go in a star pattern, loosening and then removing all of them like we did on the whole cover. So go on a good start on that. Try to snap it. What's up? All right, go ahead. Try again. Mm-hmm. There we go.
Just break them loose, yeah.
Yep.
I got the instruction from the boss. Told me to, once you crack them loose, you want to back them all out in a star pattern as well. Keep in mind the order of the spring and all of the bolts and stuff in there. I'm not really that technical, but just back them out and make sure you keep them in order. I said some stuff might come loose, so also keep in mind about that. And yeah, we're going to do that right now. Still warm.
So now, this plate, good there. All right, and then we'll get that. So, actually hold that real quick.
Yes.
So, this right here is your pressure plate. This is your actual clutch. This is a friction plate. And then you will also, behind this, you'll have a steel plate. The friction plates have these teeth that grip onto the outside basket, is what it's called. And the steel plates have teeth that hold on to the inner hub, which is this part. I would go in greater detail as to how this works, but this is already a quite lengthy video. So I will continue to move forward. All right. So we have to remove this nut in the center to move forward. We actually, if I were to turn this though, I don't know if I can do it, but basically this whole thing would spin. So unless you have an impact, which I do, but I want to try to avoid using it for this, there's actually a tool that I'll show you in a second that holds this inner hub in place. But for me to use that, I have to remove some of these plates. So you normally just get a pick or something, kind of pry up on it. You want to make sure you keep these in order. So this is kind of like vice grips. We have an adjuster on the bottom, and this actually locks in place, and you unlock it from here, and it's got these kind of like claw kind of things. And I shaved these edges down a little bit so it has a little bit of a better grip. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of basically get it right in here. So now that this is holding the inner hub from spinning, I'm gonna put a breaker bar on here. If it'll frickin' fit. Alright. Then exert a good bit of force, alright? Alright. Ready, set, go. Yeah. Alright. So now he's gonna hold this. I'm gonna blip this off. I don't really like to use impacts for this, but it does make it a little bit easier. Alright. We'll go up here. Alright, you ready?
Nope.
No? Ready?
3, 2, 1, go.
Wasn't that freaking easy?
It's like, wow, I didn't feel anything.
No, you won't. That's the thing. It shocks it. It's not really necessarily force as much as it just shocks the crap out of it. So now the nut's off. There's going to be these springs in here. Not all bikes have this, and they have a very particular order that they sit in. And just for simplicity's sake, we have it oriented like this. Or make sure you keep these in order. It's super important. You should be able to move this whole thing out.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So now we keep the whole assembly as one. You could just disassemble the whole thing, but this kind of makes it a little bit easier because there's a particular order for all of these friction plates and steel plates. So now that it's all as one assembly, we'll set this off to the side. So we're going to remove the guide chain bolt. So this one right here.
Oh, yeah.
See if the one you have is the right size. For you guys, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all the way down there, and we have to remove everything in front of it, including this oil pump, drive gear, the chain, and everything else. So we are going to first remove this guide, the black bar on the right, and in case there's any washers or any fine things, we're going to try and put some towels on the bottom and make sure nothing drops in there. Okay, set that aside. Make sure there's no washer there. We're good there. So, next thing we're going to remove is going to be the bolt down here. Now keep in mind, this one is a left-hand thread, so we would actually spin it the opposite direction that we normally would in order to get this to come out. But when we do it, this is probably going to spin. So we might have to jam something in here to keep that from happening. We could just use an impact for this, but I'm going to try to avoid that if I can.
Oh.
All right. Got it? Okay. Thank you. Let's see if that's out by hand. Pretty much get it by hand. Now when you remove this, be very careful anything you remove here, because there's a big sump right here. You don't want anything to fall down there. Now the drive gear should just pull out. So just being real careful. All right. Now this gear shows out, showing you that that's the side that's supposed to face outwards. Inspect your teeth to make sure there's no premature wear, any chipped teeth, anything like that. And this one seems to be in pretty good condition. Inspect the area down here for any collars or any washers, like there is a collar right here. I'm going to put the towel underneath it first. Try and catch it. If there is. All right. We're going to have this side facing upwards, so we know which side goes which. Go ahead and set that facing up. Make sure there's nothing else there. So we should be good. Now we're gonna remove the chain. Now you have a collar here. You could remove, a few other things in here, but there's no need because the next part is down here. The shift star is actually right back in there. So we're gonna ignore all this for now and move forward. Now, the next piece to come out is this piece. This is your like shift lever inside. You're gonna have a collar inside here. And as you remove this, make sure that it doesn't drop into the bottom of the engine. So remove it carefully. And this is the part that has a shaft that goes all the way through that we removed earlier, that C-clip. Now it's free, so now it's free to remove completely. You'll have a washer on the end. I'm gonna see if I can pick that up with this thing. She doesn't want to. So, and to make sure this is oriented correctly, you just slide it on there. Inspect this for any excessive grooves. There's a groove up here for the C-clip that we removed earlier. This is the part that the shaft, the shift shaft, one of the first things that we did. This is where it gets attached to. So check here too. There's a C-clip back here. That's good. The spring is intact. So this is seeming to be a pretty good shaft. So we'll set that off to the side. You're gonna have a collar right here. So we're gonna remove that collar. And we have the raised edge facing out. So now we have these two Torx screws right here. We're gonna undo those. Make sure you watch out for any washers. In here, you're gonna have a couple of springs and some very small pieces. So make sure you keep this together, because if this flies apart, sometimes it could be a pain to put it back together properly. Now this is the piece that we're after, is that thing right there. Now before we get to this piece, we have to unbolt this one, and this is the roller detent and has a spring behind it. So we're gonna unscrew this, and there's a spring back here, so just be mindful of that. I'm gonna go slow. So we got a washer behind this one. So we'll try and keep all this together. And this has a roller bearing, so you want to actually shake that and see if there's any crazy amount of play, which this one's perfect. All right, so we're gonna crack this one. Not seeing any washers. Now we're going to remove that. No washers. This is the part we're looking to replace right here. And I'll grab the new part and we can compare them. Wow, that's day and night. So this is the old one and this is the new one. And if you can see, this has actually, these are the channels. Basically, each depression is where a gear is. And right here, this is where neutral would sit. Same thing for this one here. And if you can even just look at the detent for the neutral area, this one actually has a fairly aggressive edge to it. It has a very deep indentation. Here, it's actually very smooth on the edges. Has a gradual indentation, but as you can tell from the teeth here, this is a dramatic mountain right here. And these indentations are very narrow, very small. And this one seems to be at a much sharper angle than this one. I'm very excited to see how it's going to shift, because it seems like this one is much better machined. And because these depressions are much deeper than the new or the old one, it's definitely going to keep me in gear better. And if I had any false neutral issues, this would actually solve that, and that's what this is designed to do. Also smooth out the shifts entirely, but everything here seems to be very sharp. And on the back side, it actually seems like this one is a little bit bigger, these little cam areas, and this one seems to be a little bit narrower. But let's see how this works. So now we're going to throw this one in. So we're going to use a little bit of Loctite, and this is the non-permanent one, and we don't need a bunch, just a little. And we have our new cam. Now there's a little detent right here that has to correspond with a notch on this surface. So we're going to put this in. We're just going to try and get that notch lined up until it seats. There we go. So now we're good there. I'm going to throw our bolts in. This is going to get tightened down to 18 foot-pounds or 216 inch-pounds.
Yeah, so I just need a message.
Alright, so now we got it installed, and we're just going to reassemble everything. Follow your service manual for torque specs of everything that was taken off, and then it'll be time for a test drive.